What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and you're here for another episode of Facts Project. Today, very special guest. I'm here with Jerry Carita. We are here to talk about Cicada Samurai. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, an interesting aspect of us reading over a lot of summaries on Kickstarter is the ultimate fact of just the introduction itself. Mm-hmm. What basically brought you to this point? To basically, this is your first Kickstarter. This is your first creator-owned comic. What essentially brought you to this moment?
So I've been working in comics for an indie publisher called Blue Juice Comics for the last 2 years. It's a bunch of friends of mine own that company. We all worked together 14, 13 years ago on a TV show called Comic Book Men. That's like Kevin Smith's show.
Yes, sir.
And so I was a producer. All the guys at Blue Juice were, the audio mixer, the cinematographer, one of the ACs had a story idea. He's now a screenwriter. So they formed Blue Juice Comics and they started working. That was when I started reading comics. I didn't grow up reading comics. I didn't have that. I didn't have that experience. My geek thing when I was a kid was TV, serialized television. So that was my thing that I loved. Star Trek, that was my jam as a kid. Mm-hmm. And comics I started reading on the set of Comic Book Men. So the first comic I read was of The Walking Dead. And that was the very first comic book series I ever picked up and read. So fast forward to now, I've been a TV producer since I was like in my 20s. It's a long time ago now. And I wanted to just be able to write my own stories and tell them. And most of what I've done in TV is reality TV. You don't get to script that, And so I had these ideas for stories I wanted to tell. So I started writing them and here I am.
Well, now with this title of Cicada Samurai, like you described it as a gory horror action-driven comic. Now, the fact that the first comic book that you picked up was The Walking Dead, would you say that your preference of genre is horror more than anything?
For sure. I mean, I think I like spooky. I like spooky with a sense of humor. I like funny comics, that are you can do things in comics that you can't do on TV or in a movie. You get like an X rating for the kind of violence you put in a comic book.
It's true.
Because it's a drawing. It's a drawing. You can get away with a lot more. And I enjoy that. I like that kind of even in doing like a lot of reality TV, I would always try to have these jokes that were in the shows that would sneak in just under the radar of the practices and guidelines people at the network.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just under, what's the threshold here? Let me get in just under that. So I enjoy doing that comics. And I think in this case, I just got obsessed with cicadas. And then I came up with this character based on, a lot of my own personal experiences. Not that I'm a samurai or a cicada, but the character is sort of based on, a lot that's going on in my life right now. And that was it. I just, I read a lot of other writers talking about their process, and a lot of them just say things like, I think it's John Cameron Mitchell who did Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Did you ever see that movie? And it was a movie. It was a musical. It was an album. It was a rock show in like the 90s that became a musical. And he used to say, just take things you love and mash them together.
Right.
And then if they might work and you end up making something magical and cool and, hopefully original. And I think that's kind of where I'm trying to just take some stuff I was kind of into and vibe them together, see if it works.
Well, talk about perfect timing, because I mean, the beginning of this summer, I mean, I think we were kind of infested with the cicadas all the way throughout the entire region. I live in Jersey. I know you're up in Brooklyn.
I'm in Brooklyn, yeah.
Yeah, so we were getting like attacked left and right.
So I grew up here, yeah, and it was all like the millions of them just come out of the ground I think it was
17 years.
Every 17 years. And so, I started thinking about that number, and I have kids. My kids are 12, 10, and 7. And as the older ones get older and older, they start to do more and more stuff without me, you can't protect them anymore. So I was reading, I had all this in my head, during the pandemic when we were all like higher anxiety, right? So I had all my anxieties were at the surface. And then I started reading about cicadas, and they come out of the ground every 17 years. They live for like 3 weeks and then they die. Mm-hmm. They're above ground long enough to mate and drop dead. And that's it. Like that's their whole life, which is not a bad life. Not a bad life to have, right?
Just sucking on tree roots.
That's it for 17 years. And then they're all just like waiting to go above and have party and drop dead. And my thought was, what if there was one of these cicadas who was immortal who his only job was to protect all of these millions of cicadas all at one time, as they are basically teenagers going out into the world for the first time.
Hmm.
You know, and I started reading about them. They're fascinating. Like, I don't get too like scientific and weird about it, but like, you know, they're basically defenseless. They're just stupid flies. They're just gigantic,
Yeah.
dopey, like teenagers. You know, they just go out in the world. They don't know anything yet, and they start like doing stupid shit. And you got to like every once in a while rein them in. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, they're also, even in a biblical kind of sense, they're otherwise paraphrased as locusts.
Yeah, people think that. So that was the whole thing when Europeans got here. They had
Hmm.
never seen cicadas. They thought they were locusts. They
Yeah.
thought they were a plague from the devil. You know,
Right.
they and like when they came out of the ground, they're green and they have these big red. Like they come out in this weird shell and then they pull their way out of the shell and they're bright green with these big red eyes.
Hmm.
And the superstition was their eyes are red because they've been staring into the fires of hell underground. Like
Yeah.
the Europe, these are people who wanted to burn witches. You know, so they
Yeah. Of
so like they
course.
were a superstitious bunch. Um, and so that's kind of where my fascination with those critters started. And I thought, you know, there are these hornets that eat them. There are foxes and birds eat millions of them every time they
Hmm.
emerge. It's like a feast for these animals. And so I thought, you know, there should be one whose job it is to try and keep them safe. And he's going to fail, like all parents fail. You know,
Yeah.
some kids are going to make it and they're going to be great. Every once in a while, one's going to slip through your fingers. He's got to take care of millions of them.
Hmm.
So imagine that. Like I get anxiety about three of them. Imagine I had a million kids that I alone was charged with the safety
Responsible
of.
for.
Yeah. So that's the whole. That's kind of his where he's coming from. So when he's narrating the story, it very much sounds like a parent, you know, kind of whose job it is to take care of these kids, and even he doesn't know why. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he's been around for over 100 years. He's done this for 6 generations. Um, there is technically nothing saying that he can't just walk out the door,
Yeah. That's true.
you know, but he has some kind of like a noble sense of duty, and that to me screams samurai. So that's how I brought those things together.
Yeah, because I was looking at, if you're talking about it from that aspect, when you're saying that basically he's immortal, he's like pretty much the only one that's above ground when
Right,
when basically those millions unfold. So he's sitting
right,
and waiting, and he knows basically about every sense of prey that's pretty much
right.
going to hit the millions of these cicadas as soon as they pop out of the ground.
And that's it. I've got him kind of. He goes below with them while they're waiting to emerge, and kind of it's kind of like the one. He's like a resident, like an RA in college. You know, his job is to kind of guide you. He knows a little bit more. You know,
Yeah.
but they've never seen the sun. They don't even. They have no idea. They have no idea what's up there, and so they're not going to listen. Some of them are not going to. Some of them are going to go off and do their own thing, and he's got to, you know, take out the swords and save them.
Man. So describe to me basically, you you you've talked about your background in reality TV, and basically you're once into doing this first creator owned comic of yours. You've also are basically starting your own imprint in Thorny
Right.
Comics. Now, what basically is going to be the premise of this? Now you're starting at issue 0. It's
Yep.
going to be a mini in the hopes of well, sorry, congratulations already, because you've already pretty much been funded.
Thank
But
you.
in basically focusing on your imprint as well as the first comic, what do you hope to achieve going forth now that you've basically started your own business with this?
I mean, the dream is to quit the day job.
Ah.
Like the dream down the road is that this is something I'm really enjoying, and if I can make this the thing I do to make a living, that would be amazing.
Mm.
um you know, I've been joking with some friends of mine. You always like when you're doing TV, any kind of creative thing where you have executives at a network or a studio or whatever, where they give you notes, and sometimes you get notes and you're like, oh, I gotta like undo this thing that I really love, that I worked hard on. And
Hmm.
so I've been a friend of mine is working on a show and he keeps on getting these really crazy notes. And I called him up and I said, so I wrote this comic book about, you know, all my anxieties as parenting, but it also has like insect samurai, and like a murder hornet. You know how many network notes I've gotten?
Mm.
So I mean, this is great. You know, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm working with friends. I can kind of pick and choose who I want to, you know, reach out to about being artists on the series and stuff like that. And you know, apart from Cicada Samurai is the first book I'm doing. That's one that I'm writing. I'm working with an artist named Mary Landro. She's amazing.
Hmm.
She's a Canadian artist with a really big following online. She did her own Kickstarter a few months back that did really well. And she's like super entrepreneurial. Every couple of weeks, she launches some other side business that's online. Like,
Wow.
she's awesome. Anyway, really great, very talented. Um, I'm also writing a book called The Grizzly Crew, which is more of like a all ages story.
Okay.
And then apart from that, I'm going to be publishing things that I'm not writing. So, I don't plan to just use it to write my own projects. That's one of my focuses, but I want it to grow into something that can be self-sustaining. And so to do that, you need to bring in other people, other creators, creative teams and projects. And the next thing I'm going to launch actually is it's called Reign of Dracula. It's
Mm.
Rich Davis, who did Cult of Dracula, which was at
Yep.
Source Point. He's doing right now Prometheus and Chains, which is I think Red Five Comics. Um, and so I'm doing the sequel to one of the sequels to Cult of Dracula.
Mm.
So that'll be our next. We'll do that as a Kickstarter. We'll do some special editions for fans, and then that'll be in stores next year.
And
So
you,
that's the next goal. I want to put comics. I want to print them. I want to put them in stores.
yeah, talk about
That's
hit the ground running, man. It looked like you basically just started out the gates, and you pretty much already got a lot of projects already at your whim.
Well, I'm really lucky because again, I like my buddies at Blue Juice Comics. I've been helping them and working with them for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I basically got to learn the whole industry, through their company that they've built for the last 10 years now.
Mm.
So I was working as an editor on their projects, and Bonnie, the Accelerators, and Billy the Kid. And through Billy the Kid, creator of that show, that book is Justin Gray, and he's a big Kickstarter
Oh yeah,
creator owned artist.
yeah.
So he
I
does.
have some of his Hope comics.
Yes, yeah. He actually
He just had some
3 and
bad shit
4.
go down.
Yeah. He had literally a tree fall on his whole house and destroyed. Like they basically have to build him a new house, but it it
Wow.
it was scary. I was talking to him that day. He was in the hospital. His the tree like basically fell on his daughter who was indoors.
Wow.
She's okay. They all got out of it physically unscathed, but like their whole world is upside down now. But so that book's a little late now in being delivered.
But all
uh,
right. I mean, it's funded.
totally,
Take your time.
totally, absolutely. But Billy the Kid is his book is one of the books that Blue Juice does, and so I got to work with him a lot, and he's become a friend. And so he guided me a lot for how to set up the Kickstarter and kind of what works and what doesn't, and
Mm.
how the fan base works. Because it all seemed weird to me. Kickstarter seemed very strange because in my
Yeah.
mind it was always, before I knew that comics were starting to kind of explode on it. It was always that thing where it was like I invented this. It's a little thing for an AirPod, and I
Mhm.
want you to give me a few bucks, and I'll make a prototype, and then you'll get one, and that's it. You
Yeah.
know, and the comics community is just like so hungry for a
Massive.
place to get huge. And just every time I hear someone say like comics are dying, I laugh my ass off.
Yeah.
I just laugh in their faces. Marvel and DC overall, maybe their sales are, I don't know where their sales are, but there's so many people doing what I'm doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are getting funded
Yeah.
directly by going directly to a few hundred people. You get a few hundred people. I'm fully funded right now. I'm not at 100 people yet.
Yeah.
You know, if you can find 100 people to support an idea that you have, you can make comics and you can sell them, and people are doing
That,
it. And
no, no. That's the
so
whole reason for the platform. Every
I
single
love it.
comic you see behind me is an indie comic, and I've probably got a whole nother shelf and a half of just
Yeah,
straight indies. But the thing is,
yeah,
Kickstarter and a lot of other platforms have been able to basically get the jump start. Kickstarter, of course, being the OG now,
right,
but with like Zoop and Crowdfunder and of course the affluential Indiegogo,
right,
like those type of platforms have been able to be successful due to the fact that a lot of generated profit for their company has been based through comics.
right.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the thing
and
is
that's
like,
it.
yeah, they
And
focus
it's
on.
great. And like the comics community, basically, like, it's very hard for shops these days to carry indie books.
Oh
They don't
yeah.
know if you're going to be around next month. It's a gamble, so they kind of have to lean into the capes and the tights, which are great stories. The writers
Mhm.
on those books are wonderful. There's no knock on. I've read everything Batman related in the last few years. I love superhero stories.
Right.
Um, but people who are doing like what I'm doing, it's hard to just do this directly. A lot of people will go the route of trying to get a job at Marvel and then launch your own indie book while you're at Marvel.
Yeah.
And now you can kind of skip that. You can go straight to the people, tell the stories you want to tell to the people who are interested in it, And Kickstarter is just like a great place where all these fans have descended on it and decided, yeah, I support these and I want you to keep coming back.
Mm.
So hopefully that's why I did this. I did it as a short. I have a couple of covers by people I really like. I like Walt Flanagan from Comic Book Men, who
Yeah.
I met on Comic Book. He's a great artist. He did a cover for me.
Oh,
Mary did too. And then Takashi Okazaki, who created
I
Afro
wanted to
Samurai.
bring that up
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
holy shit. It like the all right, that name stuck out.
Yep.
Why? Because I was a gigantic Afro Samurai fan. And yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The fact that you got Takashi Okazaki to basically handle the character designs that
Yeah.
you did for this book was like, oh, damn, he basically got the Afro Samurai creator to start doing these character designs for you.
Right.
How the hell, I know that you had like a little bit of connections and everything like that, but how does that happen?
This is pretty funny. I actually do have some connections in comics, but I sent him a message on Instagram
No
and
shit.
he that's it. And he wrote back. That's the whole story. I wish I could tell you that I like knew some secret code or called somebody and got like his we don't he doesn't speak English. I don't speak Japanese.
Yeah.
I sent him a message on Instagram. He had done this cover for I think it was a werewolf cover. It might have been for a Marvel book like Werewolf by Night or something like that.
Okay.
But he had done this big pinup. It was on Instagram. I was like scrolling through artists that I wanted to try and work with for this project, and I was like, I'm just gonna reach out. I'm gonna see what happens. And I sent him a message, and a couple of days later he wrote back and he was like, I love cicadas. Let's talk. Here's my email address. That's it. I had no idea. Cicadas are a very big thing in Japanese culture. I didn't know that they had them there.
I didn't know
But
that either.
he immediately sent me back all these images of Japanese toys and cartoon characters from when he was a kid that
Well,
all look like cicadas. And
if you think about it, Kamen Rider, like those older like
exactly.
Tokahatsu type storylines,
Yes.
Kamen Rider looks like an insect, you know.
Yes.
And
I've
me,
gotten a few people online actually point that out that the character, my art looks a little bit like that.
it
Yeah.
kind of does look like that.
Yeah.
I was stationed in Kadena Air Force Base for about like
Oh
eight
wow.
months. So I'd never seen cicadas out there. They're probably like in the northern end of the island or anything like in Okinawa, maybe. But I never
Right.
saw them on the island or anything like that. But the fact that that went down, and for one, I mean, shoot, congratulations for getting that. And for
Yeah.
for two, thank God for Google Translate because
Oh, it was amazing.
you wrote it in English and he probably answered back in Japanese and then you just translated that shit out.
That's
It's
it.
like how do you
And
work?
I just got lucky. I think he had an opening and he was into it. He would like the idea.
Yeah.
And so he did the initial designs for the main character, which is what I used for his cover in the
Mhm.
on the Kickstarter. That's his original, first that's the first time I saw the character in action. Was
Okay.
that it was actually black and white, and I had someone slam it, Mugiono do the color for it. And he did a great job.
Right.
And so that was that's just the first time I saw the character. He drew me like a little design, with all the details pointed out. There are 3 knives in his belt and the extra set of arms. And the whole idea, I had this idea in my head of the character being basically humanoid inside of this
Shell.
giant. Yes, because when I was a kid, every time the cicadas emerged, this too. You grew up in Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So you find them all around, dead
Oh, they're
in
all
the
over the
in
place.
shell. It's just a
Yep.
shell,
And they
you know.
crunch when you like if you step on
Yes,
them accidentally.
yes. So I wanted that to be the samurai armor. So I wanted it to be this big, bulky kind of thing that looked almost like he would be immobile, but it really is the thing that makes him look, completes the look of a cicada. So it has the big red eyes on it, and he just nailed it. He also did a pass at a couple of the other characters that we haven't seen in the book yet, that we will in the first issue later on. And then he's incredibly busy, and like he actually started bouncing ideas off me for the story. He really
Mhm.
liked it. Oh, it's great. It's like if you're gonna do like a samurai story and you can't get Kurosawa, because he's not around anymore.
I read that in the summary, by the way. Yes.
Yes, Takashi is like amazing. I ran the story by him, and he was like, if you do, he was referencing other samurai movies that I had been watching in anticipation of doing the book.
Mhm.
You should, if you do this in the next cycle, you could do Seven Samurai down the road. And like I was like, I have the same ideas. I'm going to do it. Like it was awesome. It was like so cool. And then I was honestly begging him for a little bit. I was like, can you please? Is there any way that you could do the art inside the book. He has like 3 animation projects. He was doing
Oh,
Star Wars
yeah.
Visions for Marvel. He did the
He
book
just did that.
for Marvel. Yes, that came out. So this my relationship back and forth with him has been going on for a little over a year.
Oh,
So he had just started working on the Star Wars thing.
all started from you just shooting your shot.
I just was like, hey, what does it cost me to look like an idiot? Worst
Yeah.
case, he never responds, or he
Well,
writes back and goes,
yeah.
like, no, do you know who I am? That's what he
Yeah.
could have said. He would have been well within his rights to be
I
like,
do actually.
yeah, do you know who I am? Like, I do. You're right. I apologize. It was my bad.
Man,
But
so like,
I just got lucky. And then Mary initially was busy too, and then a few weeks later, I saw that she kind of opened up for commissions again, and I asked her, and she was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So she's been working on the pages ever since,
mm,
and she's great. She's amazing. She has like somewhere in between, like an American comic book style and like a manga style. So it's like not all the way as far as what Takashi was doing. It's a little bit, somewhere in the middle, but it's like it's another different take on the character. We made him older. Takashi's version looks a little bit
uh,
like
like a
tiny.
child. Yeah.
Yes. And so we wanted the young ones to look younger. So we needed the main guy to look a little older.
Right.
You know.
Now, even in a sense, you've decided to pitch this completely out the gate with this first Kickstarter with maybe around 8 to 10 pages. Not a lot of people do that within the mini, and then
Right.
basically like setting your goal for around like close to just like 2,500. I just want to get these like first ones out the gate, and I just want to showcase the first 10 pages of the story.
Right.
Now, quintessentially, from what I've heard, because I know you wanted to do this, you felt like you wanted to basically assume that the stretch goals would actually stretch out the comic.
And I kind of I wasn't planning. I'll be honest about this. I was planning on 8 pages, and
Okay.
the stretch goals were not going to stretch the book. That was not part of my plan.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was finishing writing it, I thought to myself, I wanted to keep the cost down, so that's why I was going for 8 pages. Um, and I wanted to just kind of, it's a test balloon, see if people like it at all. And if people are like, I know I don't need to do a full thing. I can pivot, I can change, I can, make adjustments.
Yeah.
But as I was writing it, it was hard. It was very hard to just get a little story, an introduction to the world. It's a lot of information, that you got to kind of hide in the story and not have just a whole page of text where someone's telling you the backstory. I didn't want to
Right.
do that.
Right.
So I tried to parse it out, and 10 pages felt better. So I had the 8 page version.
Yeah.
And as soon as I hit my funding goal as quickly as I did, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for the 10 page version.
Okay.
And it was additional stuff later in the story. So Mary hadn't gotten there yet, in
Mhm.
the art. So we're going for 10 pages.
Okay. Now, initially, did you want this to be a one shot, or did you want to like basically just make this a whole series?
No, I always kind of thought of it as a series. I just
Okay.
didn't.
Good.
I didn't want to like. I'm trying to be smart about the business side of it, because producing it is a passion of mine. But I didn't want to, you know, throw all of my own personal money, into it if people weren't going to be interested in buying it. So
Right.
I wanted to do the test balloon, but I always my hope was that the test balloon is very much set up to tell the story.
Mm,
It's just to basically to set up the story in this one shot. Two of the cicada teenagers, basically the younger
yeah.
cicadas, have decided to do what teenagers do and not listen to what
Listen to
they've
everybody.
been told. Yeah, like they're just telling us it's scary up there. It's not scary up there. We're gonna go check it out. So two of them decide to go on a walkabout above ground, and they immediately get into danger.
Mm-hmm.
And so our hero has to, unexpectedly, for the first time in 17 years, his armor's been hanging up since the last generation of
Mm-hmm.
cicadas. So he's just been basically like meditating and trying to keep these kids in check for 17 years. Now he's got on the sword and the armor and go above ground and save these kids from what the mess they've gotten themselves into.
Now
And
I'm sorry. The
no, go ahead.
yeah, the villains in this story. Of course, we talked about the cicada killing hornets, who I had to go into and research and everything like that. And yes, like nature is fucking crazy, but it's
Horrible.
absolutely amazing.
I read about that. What that thing does, and right away I was like, that's a comic book villain. I don't even have to change anything. Like
No,
what it does in real life is awful, you know?
yeah.
So
But outside of that, birds, maybe
yeah,
even some type of rodents, maybe a squirrel or two might find one on the
foxes.
ground. Foxes, like
Foxes eat tons of them.
so are all these villains basically showcased in this comic?
In this issue, no. In this issue, we meet the Hornet. The Hornet has sort of a cameo, and there's one monster above ground. So if you think about it, like the cicadas and the main character Roju, who's the samurai, they're all they're actually cicadas, so they're this big.
Yeah,
So a fox would be like Godzilla.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's like a dinosaur. He's like fighting these monsters basically.
Hmm.
They're kaiju. It's like that's kind of what
Yeah,
it is. He's fighting these like so the in this one it's a raven. It's a giant raven with like razor sharp claws, and it's just a hungry bird that just doesn't care that you're a kid. I want to eat you. I'm going to kill you. You know, and then the parent has to come and try and protect you from that. That's the whole thing.
right.
So that's it. That's the whole thing. That's the story in this first issue, and that's so it's really just you get a taste. You get the backstory, you get to meet the characters, you see some action right away.
Yeah,
Like immediately there's some carnage, and then later on there's a little bit more carnage, and then we get to meet the villain that will be sort of the scary big bad for the whole first arc when I get there.
yeah. And even so, I was curious. The life below ground for cicadas that we don't see because we only see them when they come out. Is
Right.
that even showcased?
Yes. So we see a little bit of it in this comic because they're all the kids are below ground. They're just like it's this story takes place like 3 or 4 weeks before they're meant to
They're supposed to
emerge.
emerge.
So they're all getting antsy. They all have senioritis. They can't wait to get out. They're all just like, I'm done. I want to graduate already. I want to get to prom. I want to get laid, and I want to have my party, and that's it. I want to go do my thing and be an adult and live my life now. You know, and so we get to see that underground. Very little. It's just I 10 pages, so that's not the focus as much. But when we go into the series, it'll be the first issue will be sort of leading up to them emerging. So there'll be
Okay.
there's danger below ground too. Like animals dig them up. Moles will actually dig them up out of the ground and eat them in the burrows and stuff. So
Dang.
they're that's why there are millions of them. That's why they make such a racket when they come out. They're around for 17 years. They get one shot. So
Yeah,
the only way the species survives is if there are millions of them, because half of them are going to get killed and eaten and all these horrible things.
that's crazy. And I can imagine within a matter of 8 to 10 pages that the conflicts start pretty early.
Oh yeah, it's right away.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the next time that we could actually like look to find some type of like to actually like get outside of the action and look for any type of dialogue. And I'm sorry, you said the name of the main character,
Roju.
Roju. Okay.
Yeah.
Just say I didn't know
So
that.
his name. I actually didn't put any of that in the Kickstarter. I'm realizing.
No, you didn't.
No, I wanted to stay true to the Japanese thing, so I looked. I researched names that had like several meanings and things like that. So Roju is like an elder.
Okay. 'Cause I see for
Roju,
one, I'm thinking of a samurai and almost in a Clint Eastwood aspect. It's like a man with no name.
yeah. No, this one he has a name because he was originally just a kid. He was one of these kids,
Hmm.
and then he got his powers. We don't learn that story in this issue, but he eventually got his powers, and then became immortal. But he was just a kid with a name, so he kept his name. And
Mm.
I mean, when he was a kid, his name doesn't make sense. But Oroju is basically like in feudal Japan when there were samurai, they were like advisors, they were elders, the village elders and stuff. So that was like a title, Roju title. So it's kind of like calling them a teacher or a professor.
Damn. Yeah. Look, man, I think for the most part, people are going to be genuinely surprised by like the 10 pages going into it and just basically like seeing all that action in the beginning. And then you actually like because of the fact that it is cicadas and not a lot of people know about them unless you live around them.
Right.
And the storyline makes you want to research it. I mean, I know I had to because of course we were going to have this talk, but from what I know from living on the East Coast and basically like seeing these things turn up every single time. Like I'm in my 40s now, so I've seen them maybe like a few times. And this
Yeah.
summer, it's been drenched with these damn things. Like
Yeah.
they'll
They were crazy.
hit your car at full speed. It won't leave a
Yeah.
mark. You'll just hear them bounce off. And if you step on one, it sounds like a bag of chips.
It does. They're crazy. And that's what I mean. They couldn't bite you if they wanted to. They can't defend themselves.
Nah.
They're just big dumb flies. That's all. That's all they are. They have no defense. They have no like. They can't hurt you. The worst they can do is fly into your car and drop dead. It's like all suicide missions, you
Mm.
know. And so they need a protector. That was the whole thing. But yeah, they're fascinating, and all the other science behind it, like just the fact that they only it's every all the different species come every like some of them come every year, right?
Yeah.
Like smaller groups. But the big group is Brood X and it comes every 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And even that number is
Yeah.
like why 17. Did you read about that? I started reading about why 17 because
Yeah.
the big cicada numbers are like 7, 13,
13,
and 17.
17.
They're all prime numbers.
Ah.
And that's because no other animal lives on that cycle. So there's no predator that can align itself with when they emerge. So it's another survival thing. So whatever species of cicada lived a prime number of came back every prime number of years, that's the one that became dominant
Damn.
because that's the one that like the hornets can't sync up their cycle to set to 17 years.
Right, 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 right.
The foxes don't know they're coming until they pop out of the ground, so they can't like prepare for it. It's crazy. Like
It's
nature
fascinating
is.
though.
Oh, absolutely. Nature, like you said, nature is terrifying and horrible, but it's also beautiful and like
Yeah.
perfect. It's like perfect.
Damn. Now, because it's 8 to 10 pages, is this going to get delivered like in just a modernized comic, or is it going to be manga style, like small book?
No, it's gonna be full size comic,
Okay,
full
got you.
size American, yeah, modern comic.
Nice, man. Look, man, this was good talking with you, man.
Me too.
I'm genuinely excited to see this like in full swing, and especially when this gets done and the Kickstarter's like basically all set and ready. You got about like 20 days left, right?
I have 20. I think I'm 24. Like I hit my funding
24.
goal.
You still
I
have
had a
like,
very big like 12-hour span on Sunday night at like all day Sunday. I was hitting refresh.
yeah.
Nothing. And then Sunday night at like 11 o'clock, I had a flurry of new supporters. I hit my goal. And then
Mhm.
the next morning, I woke up and I got an email from Kickstarter that they made me a project we love. So I get a little extra promotion, which is great.
It's true.
Um, I got to work on my other stretch goals now, and any profits I get from this, I put towards the next book.
Dope. Dope.
That's the
Now
goal.
it's con season. Now are you looking to basically like promote this and basically shake some hands and kiss some babies? Do your
So
little political aspect of your marketing?
I've been doing that with Blue Juice for the last couple of years. So I
Okay.
did the Brooklyn Comic Con this year. I did New York Comic Con last year. We did MegaCon the last 2 years. I actually just drove down to Fairfax Comic Con in Virginia
Mhm.
few weeks ago. So I don't have any plans yet to show up as me. But in the coming months, I don't know when our next one is. That could be a few months down the road. But we'll be doing more Comic Con. I'm still working with the Blue Juice guys, so
Okay.
I'll still be doing cons with them going forward. And then they have been very helpful when it comes time for me to put these books in stores. It'll be with Blue Juice. It'll be like in conjunction with them and all their infrastructure and all that. So it's very much like an imprint that I own, but that it's working with them. So
Yeah.
we'll share space at cons and you'll see these books on their tables and stuff like that.
And the fact that you've had the chance to work hand in hand with a lot of people in comics, just in general, what has the reception been from when you like told these people, I'm working on my own comic. Here it is.
I mean, everyone is crazy supportive.
Oh,
That's the thing about comics is like there are the people who get like jealous or will discourage you, they get washed out,
mm-hmm.
you know. It's all such like a supportive group of people. And so all the indie people, it's always a feeling of like I hope you do really well and I hope you bring all of us up with you. Like that's the whole thing. You get a
Nice.
whole class of people who can kind of learn to work together and they build something together and it's their own things, but they a rising tide lifts all ships. Have you seen, so you do Kickstarters,
Mhm.
or you've seen them on, have you seen Hospice, that thing on Hospice, that
I have.
so that's what I'm talking about. That's six different creators.
Yeah, that's an
That's
anthology. Yeah.
yes. And I think Travis Gibb put it together and,
Mm-hmm.
and he does all the Cthulhu Invades stuff. So
Cthulhu Invades Neverland was like the last one.
yeah, the most recent one. He did Oz and he did Wonderland
Yeah.
was the first one, I think. He's amazing. I met him at MegaCon like 2 years ago. The Blue Juice guys live near him in Florida. So like they've all kind of become friendly. But that hospice thing is amazing. They create like these six completely separate creators who do different kinds of books on Kickstarter and don't live near each other and have no reason to help each other. And
Mm-hmm.
they all decided we're going to create this shared universe, this one thing, this one place, a hospice where evil people die and demons come into the world. And
Mm-hmm.
then each one of them are telling their own story that takes place in that little world. And then it'll be printed later in a shared anthology.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's like, where else does that happen?
It's like a
Where?
potluck.
Yes. Yes, that's great. That's a great analogy.
Yes, it's
Everyone's
just like
happy to go to a
it's a
potluck.
comic book potluck.
Yes. And who doesn't love a potluck, you know?
Exactly. It's
But like,
uplifting the community to make sure nobody else dies.
right. That's it. That's it. And it's great, you know. So the whole community is kind of like that. Those guys are all established, and now they're all working together towards that one goal. But they're all lifting each other in the process, and everyone's been doing that. I haven't had anybody be like, "Don't do it; it's hard." You
Yeah.
know, the worst thing anyone says is, "Welcome to the world of spending thousands to make hundreds." You know,
Man.
because it's a passion and it's hard to
Yeah,
make
it's
money
true.
doing this. You
Yeah,
know,
it's like some people be like, "Look, if you're really in this to make money, like you're in the wrong business. We just really love
that's
this
it.
shit."
That's it. We love the shit. I mean, it's not like it's hard to without going mainstream and doing that whole thing. It's
Mhm.
hard to you can't really make a lot of money doing this. So it's
Right.
not if that's your goal, go into finance.
True. True. Jerry, this has been amazing.
Anytime.
I appreciate you jumping on this with me. I do hope to see a lot more Cicada Samurai in the near future, man. This seems dope. Thank you.
Thanks so much, James. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So from James Grandmaster Facts Boys, Jerry Carita's Samurai Cicada, now live on Kickstarter, 24 days left. Thank you again. And we are out.